everybody, it's Tiffany, and I was really hoping to do a live stream today talking just a little bit about organizing your stencils. This week is Stencil Week, so our products and blog posts and this video, they're all sort of focused on stencil organization, which you can also apply to anything that's called a template or a mass sil, and even a silk screen. You can lump all of those things in together. So if you're looking for a way to organize those things, this is the week for you. So let's start with the different types of organizers that we have available and how you're going to use them. So first off, let's talk about tabbed divider pockets, because tabbed divider pockets are a great way to organize stencils, right? One of the things that happens with stencils, and this one is probably a good one to work with, right? They are flexible and they have all these little edges and bits that get hung up on each other. So if you put your stencils, and this one I have a photocopy of, on a piece of paper, or put a piece of paper between the stencils, then slide them into your pockets, that's going to make it easy to pull them in and out of the pocket. So you can see each of mine has that little piece of paper behind it, right? So that makes it super easy to pull them in and out. So stencils traditionally come in kind of some basic sizes, 6 by 6, 8 by 8, 12 by 12, and then there's the smaller ones, the ones that are like artist trading card size. I think Tim Holt's really popular in that size, the brass stencils, and I'll show you those in a minute. Really popular in that size as well. So any of the ones that are going to fit in those standard sizes, 6 by 6, 8 by 8, they're going to fit in fab files perfectly. So if you want to group your stencils by size, a fab file is a great choice because you can put about 25 pockets. Now you can get 2 stencils per pocket. I would put one facing forward and one facing backwards, and you can see how I've used our shut your flap label tabs on those. And if you put 2 stencils in, one forward and one backward, just face the tabs for each of them the same direction so that you can see, right? So even though, let's see if I have one that's set up that way in here. It doesn't look like I do. So even if you had 2 in there, so this one was the back side of the pocket and this one was the front side, you still want to put the tabs facing forward so that you know where that's that chevron stencil, right? I'm going to talk about cataloging and keeping track of your stencils in just a minute. But so super easy way to organize those. And then I just use our shut your flap tabs, which you all know what those are. And there is sometimes some questions about your shut your flap tabs not sticking so well. There's a couple of reasons that happens. First of all, they are just a repositionable adhesive. So if you pull them off and take them on and they're picking up dirt, that's going to make them less sticky. Also, if you live somewhere where the temperature isn't consistent and it gets hot or cold or dry or humid, all of that stuff affects the adhesive on the shut your flap tabs. So if they're not sticking for you, just grab a repositionable adhesive. I use the one from Doris and just run a little extra adhesive on that shut your flap tab on the sticky part of it and stick it on there, and it'll stick just fine. So all the basic sizes are going to be perfect in your fab file, right? So whatever size that you're using, so these are 12 by 12, 6 by 6. Now, one really popular size is 6 by 8, and those are, let me pull some out here. Those are super common from like scrapbook.com. So I have a ton of them that are scrapbook.com. And what I did with these is I put 2 of them in and just kind of staggered them. And I could do 2 in the front and 2 in the back. I did not do that here, but your pocket can totally hold that. This is the 8 by 8 pocket, and these are the 6 by 8 stencils. And I just used the insert that came with the packaging. So I have the name of the stencil and then the stencil in front of it. And that separates the 2 also. So when I'm pulling them in and out, I'm not going to get this stencil. I'm going to have that paper, so this stencil is going to not get hung up on the other stencil that's in the pocket. But you can go up to 4 stencils in the 8 by 8 pocket when you're using the 6 by 8 stencils from scrapbook.com. So fab files are one great way to store your stencils. Now, let's talk about really quickly like how you're storing them in there, right? So these are in alphabetical order inside each one of these boxes. And then I'm keeping a catalog just like I do for everything else. Here's one sort of weird little caveat, and I'm putting up a blog post about this later in the week. With stencils, it is not as necessary to actually create a physical example for your catalog as it is with everything else, because stencils are a set size. 6 by 6, 6 by 8, 12 by 12, right? So one of the reasons I'm a big advocate of creating a catalog using your actual stamps and your actual punches is because those things are a set size. So when you make that punch or use that stamp in your catalog, you get to see exactly the real size, right? In real life, what size it is. When you're talking about stencils, my stencil catalog is an Excel spreadsheet, and it has a column for dimension because these are 6 by 6, 6 by 8, or 12 by 12. So I know the real size of those. It doesn't vary the same way things like stamps and punches vary. So if you want to create an Excel catalog, which again it's going to be in the article that gets published, I think it's be out on Wednesday. The nice thing about an Excel catalog is it's searchable. So if you have dots that are 12 by 12 and dots that are 8 by 8 and dots that are 6 by 6, and you want to search in your Excel catalog for dots, you'll be able to see quickly and easily that you do have those in all three sizes. Okay? So then you just have to choose the right way to store them. So the other option, so nice thing about fab files is they close up, right? So especially if you're going to travel with them. But if you're always going to work at home, you can also use, for the 6 by 6 and the 12 by 12, which are the most common sizes, you can also use the paper handlers. So if you want to keep your stencils sort of at the ready with no extra lid, nothing else to open, and just have them on the shelf handy and ready to pull out, you can also use the 6 by 6 or the 12 by 12 paper handler. The A4 8.5 by 11 paper handler is just a little bit too tall for 8 by 8 stencils or 6 by 8 stencils. It just doesn't work that great. So just depending on where you're keeping them and how you're using them, something with a lid if you're looking for a box, or paper handlers if you don't need the lid. Now, my preferred method, of course, you already know this, is a binder method. Make sure I don't have this upside down. So this is our 12 by 12 craft binder, and I have it loaded up with stencils. And in the front, I do have a physical catalog. So again, I've just made photocopies of those stencils that I have. And I know it's kind of hard to see with the sheen on everything with the camera. But if I want to use a flower stencil, I've got all the flower stencils represented here. If I'm going to use this guy right here, it says the number on it is 12-26. The 12 indicates the size of the pocket. So this is a Trader's 12 page. It has 12 pockets. So everything in this section behind this tab is going to be that small 3 by 4 size. And then the pockets are numbered. So this is 1 through 12 and 12 through 24. This one, and this one is 25, 26. So there's that stencil, the flower stencil that I was looking for. Right, so that's how easy it is to find that. Now, you can, so I'm going to put this on my scrap rack, right? If you want to keep your stencils as handy as they possibly can be, you can store them on your scrap rack. In this case, well, I have this in a binder, but you could pull this binder out and put it on your scrap rack and then use the cover if you want to travel with it. If you want to keep your stencils just in a binder on the shelf, this is a great way to do it as well. Each one of these sections is by size. So I've got this 3 by 4s, and then I've got 6 by 6, 5 by 7, and then in the very back I've got 8.5 by 11 and 12 by 12. So one other little trick here gets in this one. So in this pocket I have multiples. This is it's very hard to see, I know. This is the sample of what was on the package. So by keeping that together, I know that I have those 3 stencils that go together. So one of the nice things about using the pocket pages is that you can cut that information off the package and store it right with the stencils, especially if there's maybe an idea that you want to use with those stencils or just instructions for how to use them. It's all going to be right there in those pockets with your things. So all the way up to 12 by 12, you're going to be able to fit everything like that in the binder. And then of course you can pull out your binder section and store it on your scrap rack, or you can leave it in the binder if you want to travel with it, or maybe your scrap rack is full. So it's a great way to do that. So one other thing as far as the binders are concerned, my little cheat notes here, I'm trying to stuff them under the counter. You can do a whole binder that is just one particular brand or style. So these are Leah France. If you haven't used any of her stencils or templates, these are the type of stencils. I'm going to turn a page here, maybe you can see both things at the same time. Right. So I wanted to keep the packaging that came with each stencil, because the packaging, as you can see, shows me all the different ways, or probably not even all, but a large number of ways that I can use the stencil. So I've got all the ideas here, and then I've just labeled it on the side, and I've got the stencil page in the back. And I also have her total collection where I can mark off the things that I have. So if I'm shopping or if I'm going to an event, I can take this with me and I know which ones I've already got because they're checked off, versus you know, which ones I might want to purchase at the event. So you can store them by size and use that catalog feature. You can store them by brand. The scrap rack pages work great for almost every size of stencil that I've ever come across. But not every size of stencil, because these stencils are 6 by 8 and there is not a scrap rack pocket that is specific to 6 by 8. So what are you going to do? You are going to make your own pockets that fit perfectly, and you can use this for anything you want to store, not just stencils, but anything that you want to store. So this is our regular daily double page, right? It has this 9 1/4 by 12 1/2 inch pocket here, and then it has this extra little border pocket on the side. I used my fuse tool and added a seam right here and cut a new flap. I said that backwards. Before you add the seam, you cut the flap and then seam it, because that's the easiest way to do it. And now I've got two 6 by 8 pockets, slightly larger, so that I can put those scrapbook.com stencils into pockets that fit perfectly for those. Also going up this week, maybe as early as today or tomorrow, I did a whole video on the step-by-step of how to do this. So if you're looking for a way to customize your scrap rack pages for stencils or something else, watch the video for that. Okay, so boxes work great for being able to put things away. Binders also easy to travel with and put on the shelf. If you are someone who likes to use your stencils all the time and you have space on your desk or on your shelf, the desk-made, I'm going to load this from the front because that would be easier. I have a few small stencils in the front already, but the desk-made die stamp and supply organizer, which we should call the die stamp and stencil organizer, is going to really bring all of those stencils right out in front of you. These have some little separators in them, right? So, I mean, you can literally spread out your stencil pockets in there if you're using the 8 by 8s, but even your big stencils, your 12 by 12s, in the tab divider pockets for 12 by 12 are going to be able to fit into that die stamp and supply organizer. So you've got space in the front for your small stencils. If you only use 6 by 6, the 6 by 6 pockets are also going to fit in there. And of course you can stagger sizes easily right in that front row. So depending on how many you have of which sizes, keeping this out if you're someone who uses stencils all the time. So especially if you're a big fan of mixed media or you love doing Tim Holtz type techniques, those designers are always using stencils on everything they do, right? So whether it's a card or a scrapbook page, or you're making a tag, or you're doing some sort of art for your house, keeping your stencils out, visible, accessible is really going to motivate you and inspire you to use them. So the die stamp and supply organizer is a great way to do that as well. One of the other things about storing your stencils in a pocket of some sort is that it does, if they're messy, which they often are, you can just fold that piece of paper around them and you can store them together without them getting hung up. But if you've left ink or paint or something like that a little bit on the stencil, it's going to get absorbed into that paper, or it's going to stay, you know, nice and neat and tidy when you fill that paper around it and then put it in the pocket. So if you're somebody who finds that your stencils are always making a mess on other stencils or wherever you're storing them, maybe just putting them between 2 sheets of paper or a sheet of paper that's folded in half is going to help you with that as well. Okay, so it is Stencil Week this week at Totally-Tiffany. So if you're watching this video anytime after the week of January 13th, 2020, you'll just have to look at ways to organize stencils on our website. But for this week, they're all on the On Special tab or the sale tab of the website this week. So thanks so much for tuning in. If you have questions, you know, you can always reach out to us, customer service at totally-tiffany.com, or you can visit us on Facebook, Totally-Tiffany Organizes, and we'll help you there as well. Thanks so much for tuning in. Have a